Well, it's no secret that with social media getting so big, it has become easier and easier to spread a lot of information, making it easier for people to cover all sorts of matters. The good, and especially the shit that makes you lose faith in the whole of humanity. You know, good stuff. Yes, true crime, one of the darker genres that has become quite controversial over the past couple of years. Hey, it's Orangely, and because it's a no one asked yet here we are type of day, today I'm going to be talking about the ugly, the uglier, and the ugliest when it comes down to this just lovely topic. Yeah, it's gonna be a good day. I don't know if this is true, but I think there are people in this world who have been desensitized in their youth and people who haven't, and those who have, like, all things horror and laughing at people's pain, and now they watch true crime. Hey, you should definitely subscribe. Yep, that's what you should do. Yep, okay, love you, bye. I just want to preface this video by saying I don't really care about your opinion of true crime. That just meaning whatever your opinion is totally valid, and I'm not here to change it. I'm just here to tell you that you're wrong, because my opinion is the only one that matters here. But in all seriousness, I don't mean any disrespect to anyone of sound mind. You'll see what I mean by that later. When all is said and done, I want you to come to your own conclusions and do your own research to really get an understanding on how you feel about the matter. There are always two sides to a situation or topic. A good one and a not so pretty one, both of which I will be covering more in depth later on in the video. True crime has been a huge controversial topic, especially after the Dahmer documentary on Netflix came out. Yeah, we all saw how that went down. More and more people have been speaking up about their opinions of true crime, and unfortunately a lot of them are pretty negative. And even though that I think that those arguments can be valid, there is more to this genre than just death. Yeah, I know, surprising. There is a line that has become blurred, and I'm here to talk about it. At the end of the day, a lot of the controversy surrounding true crime boils down to the ethics about it, and who's to say that it's ethical or not? It really comes down to the individual person and how they view it. There are quite a lot of people who are saying that anything to do with true crime is unethical. I personally don't think that's true. Making and consuming true crime does not inherently make someone a bad person, and it would be very conflicting for me if I did. When talking about people who create things like true crime videos, podcasts, and articles, who also make money off of those things, and when it comes down to the victims' families, is probably when most people have the biggest problems with it, which I will be going more in depth in later on in the video. For the purpose of this video, we are going to consider people who make true crime content also consumers, due to them getting their sources from somewhere else. Because if they didn't, they would be pulling things straight out of their ass, which would make it untrue crime, or just fiction. Anyway, the purpose being it all comes right down to the consumer and how that person goes about the information. The first thing that slaps you in the face when doing any type of research on official news sources' opinions is unsurprisingly negative, because of course they are. I don't know what I expected when doing the research, but you would think for a news site it would vary even just a little. Tastes like irony. While my opinion on it is a relatively positive one, there are a lot of grievances in comparison. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to list one bad thing, then put my 2 cents, and then move on to the next, and so on and so forth. A lot of the criticisms when it comes down to true crime is about how the consumer reacts to the content. The main grievance with this whole thing is that people who consume it typically become desensitized, if they weren't desensitized to begin with. A lot of people believe that people who watch true crime have a hard time understanding that the crimes they are following are indeed real, and there are real victims. People are afraid that consumers, instead of understanding the amount of real pain, suffering, and mourning as being reality, and just seeing it as their entertainment. Another thing is people are taking the investigations into their own hands, trying to catch the culprit, even though they are nowhere near qualified to do so. And most disturbingly of all, they are romanticizing and empathizing the actual monsters who have caused unimaginable pain. You cannot make this shit up. It is beyond fucking disgusting. Just a little side note here, the desensitization and entertainment argument kind of play hand in hand, so what I say next has to do with both. Okay. Personally, thinking that everyone watches true crime does it for only entertainment purposes is a huge generalization of the community, because I'm pretty sure that most of the consumers do it to learn. At least that's why I do it. Don't know why you're doing it, you weirdos. And even if a lot of people don't do it to learn, it is still not fair to group them all as insensitive. That's interestist? There isn't anything wrong with wanting to learn about this type of thing, because not only does it help you understand that this world is in fact not a pretty one, but help you be aware of the cruelty that can happen to you when you're unprepared or don't acknowledge them. It's easy to miss the fact that at the end of the day, these true crime podcasts, videos, and articles are bringing more awareness to real things that are happening in the world. They are bringing light to hate crimes, knife-related violences, and crimes against very young people, and things that people aren't talking enough about. And on top of that, bringing awareness to very real warning signs and red flags when it comes to these violent crimes. People can argue that all of the true crime sources only talk about how white women and men are being affected by these crimes, and that is false. More and more minority cases are being brought to the light, especially in the last couple of years. And let's not forget that some people covering these cases is better than nobody covering them at all, which would be the case if we got rid of all true crime content on YouTube. That all being said, I do understand that there are people who just think of it as entertainment, and that's a problem. They are ignoring the real factors and real families that have to live with this terrible thing for the rest of their life. Meanwhile, the consumer can just turn off their phone or computer and move on with their day, not being affected whatsoever. If this is the case for you, sis, you need to do some serious soul searching or something along those lines. I don't know, therapy? To be completely honest, the they're desensitized because of true crime argument is a pretty weak one, because I think a lot of people who love to watch true crime were already desensitized to begin with. People who can't handle morbid situations and realities aren't going to go back and look for them. Sure, you can say that people are curious and curiosity killed the cat, but I honestly believe that if you can't handle it, you don't want to. I know that that's not always true, but I think it's safe to say that if you don't like true crime, you don't come back for more. And also, horror is a huge part of American culture, so lots and lots of people consume it. Are we as a society gonna go as far as to say horror movies are bad as well, because these are pretty desensitizing as well, believe it or not? No, of course we're not, because that would be ludicrous, and every single teenage girl in existence would be after you. I know that a lot of horror content is fiction, but it does approximately the same thing on a smaller scale. With great information comes great responsibility. At least that's what some people think. People are literally taking every aspect and fact that they find online and try to solve cases themselves. My guess is they're Clue enthusiasts. While there have been some cases that have been solved through somebody on the internet getting involved, that's typically not the case. Basically, people are taking things into their own hands when they are amateurs and very unqualified, sometimes pulling tips and quote-unquote facts straight out of their asses, which is just so great. I'm not saying that you can't come up with your own conclusions, because anyone could do that anytime without any repercussions, and that's totally okay. It's just when you claim that you've solved the case indefinitely is when it becomes a problem. Though I will say that most people are on the outside looking at whatever you post on the internet are probably just gonna say that they are theories rather than a case closed type scenario. But in the rare case that someone does think you've solved it, that can be a problem, because you don't actually know anything about solving crime, investigating, or gathering information important to the case. The truth of the matter is that you simply are just not qualified. There are reasons only professionals can give an opinion on a case in a court, because they actually know what they're talking about. Obviously, along with this comes people breaching the victim's family privacy, and that's kind of weird and messed up, and don't do that. fucking dipshits. Doing this helps no one, and believe it or not, this brings a lot more pain to the families than it does closure. This kind of thing goes into the problem if true crime should be covered at all in podcasts, videos, or articles, because people are saying that these content creators are exploiting other people's pain and that it's a problem. But I'd like to say here that a lot of these cases are public information, and the public could access them anyway, so are people just mad that they can't control what people think or say, or what? It's literally just like any other news source, just with more personality, but more on that later. Above everything else that I've talked about in this video, I think this is the worst of the worst that comes with the true crime community. Yes, above every other thing in this video, I hate this the most. I've seen it in my real life. It's insane how this can be a thing. It blows my fucking mind. There are full-ass humans on the internet who will defend and excuse and romanticize literal monsters, human monsters, who have unalived others. It is one thing to understand what brought someone to take another's life, and it's another to empathize, defend, and romanticize it. I have no words. I think it's appropriate to talk about the Dahmer documentary. Now, I'm gonna be completely clear about how I felt about it. I absolutely hated it. To say that Netflix did a big oopsie on this one is an understatement. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it was bad. It brought the sick idea of liking a serial killer to the limelight for all actually sane people to cringe at. And if you needed another reason to hate people, there you go. But sadly, this isn't just happening with Jeffrey Dahmer. It's happening with Ted Bundy, other serial killers, and mass shooters. People are making posts on the internet publicly, that are saying, oh, I could have changed them, or oh, I wouldn't have been scared, and just stupid shit like that. Number one way to becoming a fucking clown on the internet. Do they not know that everyone can see that? Anyone else need disinfectant for their brain? 'Cause I know I do. Along with that, people are going and justifying these monsters. People aren't understanding that the second they try to validate the reason for murder is the second they are invalidating the victim's death and their families. I didn't think it was possible, but my hope for humanity has dropped to a whole new low that makes me want to commit a To say the least, it's concerning and insane. And apparently it needs to be said that mentally ill does not equal murderer. Any of this ideology making sense? No? Good. That means you're sane. If there's anything to take away from this video, it should obviously be not to be a fucking idiot on the internet. You're welcome. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is true crime content creators. And without just repeating myself, I just want to say that these people make money from the way that they do their storytelling styles and their personalities. Like, nobody's like, yippee, somebody died, let's watch this video. That's not happening. It's just not. Most of these creators are respectful of the victims and their families. Could some of them be a little more sensitive? Probably. But they're not bad people. Like I said, most cases are public information, so they're not breaking any rules there. People shouldn't be going after other people's livelihood because that's just a shitty thing to do. And also, if you consider these people bad, what about news reporters? People who work in law enforcement and defendant attorneys. Oh, we're just going to ignore that? Yeah, okay. While there are a lot of bad things, there's also a lot of good. True crime has made people who fear the world they live in not feel alone. It has brought people together for discussion. It has spread awareness of not just crimes against minorities, youth, and very real violence, but to our imperfect justice system. True crime helps people learn just how real monsters are, and makes us aware of the warning signs. And this isn't going anywhere. In short, if you don't like true crime, that's cool. I totally understand why, and now anyone who has watched this video understands as well. But try not to think all people who make and consume it are bad people. There are some things everyone can work on, but shaming someone for their interests is kinda weird and very possibly hypocritical. I really like this genre, and I think other people should have the right to like it without feeling a thick sack of shame for it. Like every other community, there are toxic parts, and unfortunately, the toxicity can be very damaging to real people, and we shouldn't ignore it. But do whatever you want, I guess. That was a lot, but now you know. Let me know what you think, and if there was something that I missed, well, you see how long the video is. Let's talk about it in the comments. Anyways, thanks for watching. Aren't you gonna press that subscribe button? Okay, love you, bye!